Hi, I'm Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles Podcast. On this podcast, we spontaneously interview unsuspecting passengers with their permission, allowing them to share their intimate life stories and concerns. As our slogan states, real riders, real stories. Some riders prefer to be anonymous, while others ask me to tell their story later on. Either way, there are all genuine 5 to 10 minutes stories, so sit back and enjoy this episode. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another podcast. We have a lovely couple in the car, a lady who's blonde and petite, and a guy who's he looks very intelligent. Let's put it that way. One works in the energy sector, the other works in shoes, and we're just going to talk about how they got into the industry, what motivates them to stay in the industry, and what's the future, what's it like, or a typical day. So either one of you can go first. We've got 33 minutes.
So I actually ended up in fashion by accident.
Okay.
Because I studied English literature. And then I was a bit lost afterwards, and then I always loved fashion. So I started applying for jobs, and I ended up meeting somebody who now is the co-owner of the brand that I work for. And yeah, we make shoes. We've been making shoes since 2006. So it's a long-established brand. We are based here and in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we sell globally. So we sell to Asia, we sell to Europe, we sell to the US. So yeah, it's still small. It's very niche. It's not. We're very, very attached to it. It's almost like our baby. Mm-hmm. We never had massive plans of doing things on a mass commercial scale. Mm-hmm. Because we love what we do and we love to do it at our pace. And actually, post-pandemic, definitely this has changed. Mm-hmm. More to the way that we like to work. So yeah, this is basically what I do.
What's the process like in designing a shoe? What do you take into consideration in designing shoes?
Well, you need to take in obviously the materials. If you want to use really good materials, you can forget about making much profit. Okay. But you know that you're gonna sell something very beautiful and really well made that is gonna have longevity, and people can keep that pair of shoes for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Without, this is basically against fast fashion completely, our concept. Okay. So it's making something that might cost a bit more, but it's gonna last for longer.
So it's quality and longevity.
Yeah. Okay. And then of course there's also other costs that you have to consider, like logistics and now Brexit as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those things. What's a typical day like for you?
At the moment it's we are in sales campaign, so we basically sell to retailers. Mm-hmm. And we're making so we're basically arranging production for next season. Mm-hmm. Sometimes one of my colleagues comes, basically we meet to discuss planning, because we also sell online on our own platform, so there's a lot of marketing to think about, and then in the evening, that's when it gets more intense. We have to basically speak to the office in LA. Mm-hmm. and make sure that we all agree, even though on opposite side of the world, to take the same direction, take the same, the best decision for the brand, despite having very complete different markets, even though we're all like in the same circumstances right now with the pandemic. So
see, that's what I find strange there, because you've got different markets, but you're trying to unify.
Yeah.
But surely you would adapt for the different markets.
Well, I think it's good to follow the consumer and what they want, but you also shouldn't forget about your core and your DNA and what you want to do. Because otherwise, if you just sell anything that the consumer wants, then what's the point in having your own branding and having your own identity? So there is still like your identity as a brand still really needs to stay as the main focus, but then obviously you adapt to social, political, economical circumstances.
Okay. What kind of circumstances, obviously COVID has affected you, what kind of everyday circumstances do you look out for in the shoe business that affect you?
Well, there's I don't know, for example, manufacturing, is very difficult. I mean, this almost has worked in our favor, because one of the problems before it was that factories were getting super greedy, and they wouldn't even touch a brand that couldn't do like a big production. So now instead factories are more open to help and obviously get business in, and so they're open to also like smaller production and well and better made.
What changed? What made them change their mind?
Because they were losing business.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. I think COVID has wiped out a big number of fashion businesses, for sure.
Oh, what, the top end or the low end?
Top end, obviously, everybody had to restructure. I know, I mean, I'm from Milan, so obviously I have a lot of friends working for the fashion industry, and so many of them had to restructure and completely rethink the concept of the way they were making things and sell them. So yeah, for sure, there's a big change.
Okay.
Post-COVID for the fashion industry, which is good because we needed it. I think the fashion industry was getting too polluted and polluting. I mean, it is one. I think it's the second most polluting after energy.
both of you in that field. Okay.
So we are the evil.
Okay. So that would be the title. Find out. Listen to the two main polluters of the planet.
Polluting industry. We work for them. Yay.
Okay. So moving on over to the lovely gentleman, Bob. So Bob,
Hey.
what's tell us about your industry. How did you get into it?
So I got into the energy industry because I'm an engineer, and I've been always fascinating by both urban areas and the change that we need to do in terms of climate emergency and changing the way we produce energy, which is as you say, one of the main polluters in the world. I've been working in different countries, so Germany, Singapore. I come from France. Now I'm here in the UK, and I have seen very different ways of approaching this question of energy.
What do you think is the most sustainable energy source?
Well, I don't think there is an answer to that, but obviously solar and wind are two energies that we will always get. I mean, as soon as the earth will be there, we will get some sun. So it's definitely something that is really sustainable on the long term, and it's also what basically us as human beings and the nature is using as one of our main fuel, if you will. So but on beside that, there is no one solution to fit all or to solve any issues. And we've seen with oil, which was in the last century, two last centuries, let's say, the unique solution for everything. Everything was based on oil, because it has a very powerful energy content. So we've tried to unify everything around oil, and we see now that it's not a good solution. So there won't be one solution that will replace oil. It's going to be a mix of everything, and finding again some kind of balance, which is very important.
How do you feel about nuclear?
Well, nuclear it has good side and bad side. Obviously, when we are talking about carbon emissions, which is today the major challenge for climate, or one of the major challenge for climate, it's very low carbon. And we see that like in France, for example, where most of the energy is produced by nuclear. The carbon content of electricity, is very low compared to many other countries in Europe, and it leads to a positive impact through electrification of uses, like how to produce heat, or how to switch from fuel transport to electrified transport. So it's a very good way to decarbonize the energy. On the other hand, it's also something that produces waste, even if it doesn't produce a lot of waste, but it produces waste that lasts for a little bit of time, quite a lot of time. So I think again that it's a part of the solution, and for now it's really helping to decarbonize the electricity. But I feel that major investment needs to be done in renewable energy in order to really change things beyond just nuclear.
Okay, so the energy source depends on the country. For instance, if you're in a very hot country, you focus more on solar panels. Here, I believe we're focusing more on wind turbines. Do you feel that you do a town planning as a ex-site manager? I always said, well, every house should naturally have solar panels on to help the national grid and then bring down the consumption of things. So that electricity could just be for lighting in your house. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that is feasible?
I think there are two aspects with this. So if you look at the building itself, the more you can produce on your building for your own use, then the better. If you look just at the scale of your building, but it's not feasible. So for example, like high rise like this, what we see basically in town centers, you're gonna put maybe some PV on the rooftop if you can, but you cannot put that everywhere. But it's not gonna cover a lot of your needs because you don't have a big surface of solar PV for all the living surface of your buildings.
Okay.
So it's always good. It's an additional production of renewable energy, but it's not gonna solve the issue for energy in cities. So because if you put PV panels on all the roofs, you're gonna reach maybe 15% max or 20% max of the needs of electricity that you have for your buildings. Now what is important is actually to look at the higher level, because you mentioned national grid.
Yeah.
And actually, now it's not just about the amount of energy, but when the energy is produced and consumed. Because you need always to have a balance between what you produce
surge times.
and what you consume.
Yep.
So if you put PV panels that will produce obviously around 12 noon in the middle of the day, and it's a residential building where nobody is at home during this time, then you're going to put that back on the grid and you're not going to use it yourself. And if you do that on a large scale, you can potentially create some imbalance. And national grid is actually paying people or industries, or even you and me if you have some assets for storage or renewables, to consume or produce electricity at certain time of the day to create this balance. So now we have shifted into just looking at the amount of energy, into really when the energy is used and how to ensure that the impact on the infrastructure is the lowest as possible, or that everything we build and we create that consumes energy is able a little bit to take part into the integration of renewables. Because if there is a lot of wind in Scotland, and it's a day where you don't consume a lot,
send that power down to south.
Yeah, and it's gonna create this kind of imbalance, which can actually lead sometimes to a higher CO2 emissions, because in order to shade this imbalance, you're gonna turn on some gas-fired power plants or even coal-fired power plants, which obviously are not a good thing in terms of CO2.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Well,
So it's a very complex it's a very complex topic. I don't want to enter too much into the detail, but it's important also to understand that it's way beyond just saying that okay, there is one solution that could solve everything. So it's an ecosystem, and especially in urban areas, it's really an ecosystem that needs to be treated as such and understood as such.
what motivates you?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, the three of us live in cities, and in a big city, and we see how powerful these urban areas are, in terms of attractions, in terms of how we live, but also how it works. So how people move, how people live, and how the quality of life of people is impacted by that as well. So yeah, I've always been interested by urban areas, and most of the population is gonna live in urban areas by 2050. Well, actually 75% of the population is gonna be living in cities, which is already more or less the case in European countries like here for us. But there's going to be a lot of challenges in Asia and Africa and Southern America as well, because we are going to see this transition, and with all the challenges that you can find around that.
Yeah. Okay. So, last question, and it goes out to the two of you. What's the impact you want to have on the world?
I mean, that's a big question. I mean, of course, I think I want to hope that I'm doing my best. I'm not being one of the most, or contributing to like a lot of pollution, and to try and respect others, and also people that will come after us. I wouldn't say that I'm doing everything perfectly. I mean, it's impossible to be 100% sustainable. I mean, especially if you live in a city, it's just. But I think, yeah. I mean, I don't pretend or to think that I would change the world, but I like to think that I am giving a small contribution and not damaging it even more.
Okay.
But it's not easy. It's not easy. You come, I know, and I'm aware of it, and I know it's a limit, and I'd rather say to myself, okay, you can't actually do everything perfectly because it's not possible, and at least I don't feel frustrated, but I'm still, what motivates me is probably just, okay, let's try and do this the best as you can.
Okay. And yourself, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's important to be positive, in the sense that to have a positive impact for people around you and for the place where you are, and to help co-create positive living spaces for a more positive future.
Okay, that's good. Well, thanks for that interview on the environment and the world. And we hope to hear from you again sometime. We hope you liked that episode. Keeping in mind, we never know who we're going to interview. We post twice a day, 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. GMT. Have you ever considered the future economies to invest in? Why not listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories? Considering Africa has the fastest growing economies and population on Earth, and has done for many years, it holds 30% of the world's known natural resources. We publish twice a week, Tuesday with a guest investor, and Fridays talking about investment, politics and history, providing a clear understanding for any potential investor.